Today, we're looking at one of the most mind-bending architectural achievements on Earth, the Kailasa Temple. Now, this place wasn't built by stacking stones one on top of the other. No, it was revealed by carving away an entire mountain.
Okay, so that leads to a pretty big question, right? If you're not building up, how in the world do you create a massive 3-story temple from one solid piece of rock? I mean, the whole idea just seems to fly in the face of everything we know about engineering.
You do it by starting from the top. That's right, they carve their way down. So you have to stop thinking of this as just a building. It's really a monumental sculpture, literally excavated from the heavens downward. And yeah, the whole process still has experts scratching their heads.
All right, let's get into the details. We're talking about the Kailasa Temple, which is actually Cave 16 of the famous Ellora Caves, a UNESCO World Heritage Site in India. And get this, it's the largest single monolithic excavation on the entire planet. It's a masterpiece that seriously makes you question what ancient civilizations were capable of.
So it's really important to wrap your head around what monolithic actually means here. It means nothing was brought in. No bricks, no blocks, no mortar, nothing. Instead, they carved into a solid cliff face and just removed everything that wasn't the temple. Think about that. Every single pillar, every statue, every room you see, it's all part of that original piece of mountain.
And just to give you a sense of scale here, this complex is huge. It covers an area that's twice the size of the Parthenon in Athens. But here's the crazy part. The Parthenon was built by stacking thousands of individual blocks. This entire thing, the whole shebang, was carved out of one single rock.
So, the big question remains, how was a feat like this even possible? Well, the method they used is just as mind-blowing as the temple itself. Let's dig into this totally unconventional vertical carving process.
Okay, so this is how they pulled off the impossible. First, workers carved 3 massive trenches straight down into the rock, basically isolating this giant chunk of the mountain. Then, and this is the key, they started at the very top of that block, sculpting the roof and the main tower first. From there, they just worked their way down, meticulously carving out pillars, rooms, windows, all the incredible intricate details, floor by floor. And you have to realize there was zero room for error. One bad move, and a whole section could be ruined for good.
Now there was a profound reason for all this incredible effort. This wasn't just some fancy building project, it was a deeply spiritual act. The temple is dedicated to the Hindu god Lord Shiva, and the whole thing is meant to be a physical representation of his celestial home, Mount Kailash in the Himalayas. They even covered it in white plaster originally, to make it look like it was capped with snow.
Okay, and this is where the story goes from just incredible to, well, seemingly impossible. Because when you start to look at the numbers, they just don't add up. Not with what we think we know about the technology they had back in the 8th century. And honestly, this is the paradox that has historians and engineers totally baffled.
First up, let's talk about the sheer volume of rock they removed. Archaeologists estimate that to create this temple, workers had to excavate something like 400,000 tons of hard volcanic rock. And this isn't soft stuff. We're talking basalt, which is incredibly durable, almost as hard as granite.
But here's the part that just breaks your brain. Mainstream history, based on the records we have, says this entire massive project was completed in just 18 years. To put that in perspective, modern archaeologists who studied it say a project of this scale should have taken well over a century to finish. So let's do the math on that for a second. To get rid of 400,000 tons of rock in 18 years, that works out to about 60 tons of rock being removed every single day. Let's say they're working a brutal 12-hour day, 7 days a week for 18 years straight. That means they had to be chipping away and hauling off 5 tons of hard basalt rock every single hour. And this brings us right to the heart of the mystery. You see, basalt rock is so hard that you can't just go at it with simple iron chisels. They just wouldn't work effectively. You'd need something way stronger, like modern tungsten carbide tools, which, weren't invented until the 19th century. So how? How was this possible with only the hammers and chisels they supposedly had 1,200 years ago?
Beyond these mind-bending numbers, the temple is also wrapped in legends, stories that speak to its incredible legacy and what seems like an almost supernatural resilience.
So, construction is said to have started around 756 CE under a king named Krishna I, and for centuries it was just this incredible marvel. But its biggest test, by far, came much later, in 1682. The Mughal emperor at the time, Aurangzeb, who is famous for destroying thousands of Hindu temples, decided Kailasa was next on his list.
And this story, wow, it just perfectly captures how tough this place is. Aurangzeb sent an army of 1,000 men with orders to completely demolish the temple. For 3 years, they worked tirelessly, and they could barely make a dent. The rock was just too hard. All they managed to do was disfigure a few statues before they finally just gave up. Just think about that. The temple that was supposedly carved in 18 years couldn't be destroyed in 3.
And so here we are, left with these huge, profound questions that history and science still really struggle to answer. The temple stands today not just as a monument to faith, but as a collection of unsolved mysteries literally carved into the stone.
So, what are the big ones? Well, first off, where did 400,000 tons of rock just disappear to? There's no giant pile of rubble anywhere near the site. Second, what kind of advanced tools or techniques could have possibly allowed them to work this fast and with such precision on such a hard material? And finally, how on earth did they plan and execute this perfect top-down design where a single mistake would have been catastrophic?
Maybe the best way to sum it all up comes from an ancient inscription from that time. It says the temple was so magnificent that even the gods would pause their chariots in the sky to stare down at it, wondering if it had been made by mortals at all. But the final line is the best part. It says that even the architect himself was wonderstruck, marveling at how he could have possibly created it. And really, after more than 1,000 years, so are we.